Hello, beautiful friends and book lovers. I hope that you are all doing well. Today I am coming at you with my second review in this A Court of Thorn and Roses series. I will be reviewing A Court of Mist and Fury, which is the second installment in the book series. So like I said in my first video for this series, I feel like my way to review longer books like this and books where we're in the middle of a series is that I like to review what basically happened throughout the chapters and how I think it aided to the overall character development and story setup, and basically how it led to my overall rating for the book. So I gave the first book a 5 out of 5. If you haven't watched that review first and my thoughts on that, I recommend doing that before watching this video, so I will link that up here for you if you wanted to take a quick pause on this one and watch that one first. But yes, I'm kind of torn with this one, but I think my overall rating for it would be like a 4.5. I was going to give it a 4. This is definitely my least favorite of the 3 that I've read so far, but let me just get into why all of that is. I'm super paranoid about the camera now, because in my first review, as you guys saw, my entire freaking first part of my head was cut off and I was so annoyed. So now it looks like the camera is way up, but whatever, I just checked and it looked okay. So let's hope it's not cutting off my face. But basically, we are introduced to a whole ton of brand new characters in A Court of Mist and Fury. Some of them are my absolute favorite characters throughout the entire series. Wink, wink, Azriel and Cassian. But yes, also, this is just I'm gonna just say this once, because in my first video, I kept apologizing over and over again. I'm probably mispronouncing this wrong. So you know what? This is my one general, don't drag me if I'm mispronouncing things. I'm bound to. What I didn't find in this book that the first one had was a pronunciation guide at the end. So if that's in here and I just missed it, let me know. Sorry, I can't stop messing with my hair. I need to stop touching that. But yeah, so you know what? I'm just gonna kind of wing it and we're gonna go from there. But basically, and obviously there's a ton of chapters in this book, so I'm going to be looking at my look at how much I'm scrolling, lengthy notes on this, and I'm gonna try to sum it up. But basically, we are introduced to a ton of new characters. We have Enith, I'm guessing, I don't know, who is the very disturbing high priestess that literally nobody likes. Then we have the two fae, Braun and Hart. We have Nuala, who is the Night Court handmaiden's twin. Cerduin, which is the other Night Court handmaiden. I'm just gonna call him Az. Cassian, Amryn, love her. Miriam, Draken, Morgan. How did I forget Morgan on this freaking character list? She's literally the best. And then I have Draken and Jurian. So let's just basically get started into all the thoughts on how this book progressed. With new characters, we also have new aspects and locations in the book. So winnowing was announced in this book. So being able to transport from one place to another rather quickly. Valaris, which is obviously Rhys's kingdom, was also announced, which, oh my gosh, if I could travel to one fictional setting that wasn't Hogwarts, because obviously Hogwarts would be my first choice, hello, but Valaris would be the second. The way that Sarah J. Maas created this imagery for Valaris is just making me out of breath, as you can hear. We're also introduced to Demady, which means that you're a mind reader, which Rhys can. He can read minds. He can also inject his own thoughts and images into minds. And we also find out that Feyre has that talent as well. Basically, when we start off this book, Feyre is so scarred, right, Finn? Feyre is so scarred from her time under the mountain. She's having all of these nightmares. She's sleeping next to Tamlin, but that's obviously, not comforting her, which I think is our first sign as a reader that it's basically just going downhill from there. If she cannot find comfort with her current partner, she needs to look elsewhere. And honestly, I felt like he did not do a whole lot to comfort her at all. He was not present in just being with her and, and calming her after the nightmares and everything. He was basically just continued to sleep on his own. To Enith, I'm just gonna call her Enith, whatever, because Enith sounds freaking weird. But Enith, we're introduced to her pretty early on. She's, planning the wedding and seems to be very, very close with Tamlin and, is held in high regard here. But yeah, I couldn't stand her from the beginning of the book. She rubbed me in all the wrong ways. And I was just like, I gotta keep my eye out for this girl. Feyre realizes really early on that Tamlin is holding a very tight leash on her. She's trying to express this to Lucien, and he's like, you know what? Tam can never forgive himself, for all the things that happened to you. So, basically, can you blame him? He's basically just kind of giving excuses for Tamlin, which obviously he does a whole lot in the series so far. Chapter 4 is where we really get our first sign that Feyre is super, super Debbie Downer in this book. I am probably not the first to say this, but oh my gosh, the reason that this did not get a 5 out of 5 for me was because I was so freaking annoyed with her the whole book. Well, not the whole book, up until 60% of the book, which is a rather lengthy chunk of the book, but she was so depressive throughout the entire story. And oh my gosh, just the whole Debbie Downer feel. I get it, I do. I'm gonna touch on this in a little bit, but oh my gosh, I don't know. But chapter 4 was really where we got to see she wasn't excited meeting any of Tamlin's friends. She basically was just dreading her existence at this point. So on her wedding day, she's basically shaking and shivering with fear. She doesn't want to do this. It doesn't feel right. And she's basically begging anybody, please come save me. Please come save me. And of course, our boy Rhys comes along, and because he can hear all of her thoughts, which as a reader kind of solidifies this bond that they have. Basically, he starts, taking up his part of the bargain and brings her to his place where she meets his only living relative, who is described as a distant cousin, which is Morgan. Not Morgan, Morrigan. But it's probably I'm gonna be quite honest, when I say the name, it's probably just gonna fall. I actually love the name Morgan. I don't know, side piece, I love that name. He has some conversations with Rhys, and he's basically telling her listen, you are no one's subject. And I think as a reader, this is a really important chapter for us, because Feyre basically, Tam was acting like Feyre was his subject, right? He was everything that she was doing had to be, to his schedule, and he was keeping such a tight rein on her. And Rhys is the exact opposite. And I feel like Feyre realized this, but she didn't want to dwell on this just yet because she didn't have the mental or emotional capacity for it at this point. We have this scene then with the tithe where Tamlin is not changing any of his family's rules from the past, and he is still demanding that his people of the Spring Court, even though they're poor and have, a lot of them don't have anything, still give him, I think it was 20% or something of what they own or whatever. So Feyre hates this part, and she basically gives her jewelry to the sea creature that I'm totally blanking on, that obviously is, comes to help her later in the story. But I think this is a really important chapter for us to see that Tamlin doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know who he is yet. I mean, he says he doesn't want to do this stuff, but it's tradition and his family has done it, so he just follows suit. And you see the complete opposite with Rhys later in the series, but it's come on, Tamlin. So chapters 9 and 10 are huge because this is where Feyre and Tam have that argument, and he basically explodes the study. And then Rhys comes on in and is basically, what the hell is happening around here? Notices how skinny she is from all of her, the depression and just, the fears that she's having. And is there a food shortage here? I loved when he said that, because Tamlin was so caught off guard. He's like, no, what? And it's are you that blind to this woman that you're in love with is literally deteriorating in front of you, but you're so focused on other things that you haven't even noticed? So basically, stuff just gets worse and worse there when she returns to the Spring Court. Tam basically shuts her in, and Morgan comes to rescue her because, I don't know, Rhys wasn't allowed to step foot or something. I don't remember quite what it was, but he basically rescues her. Sorry, finished chewing on a bone. Rhys rescues her and takes her to Valaris, and she basically vows to tell Tam nothing of it. So here she's being more Debbie Downer, like Rhys is trying to show her all of Valaris, and he's opening up about his own childhood, but she basically wants nothing to do with it because she's still so negative, and she's like not letting him in at all. And this is what I mean. This is what was so frustrating. Like, I get it. We have to have a story. There has to be development. Like, she's not just gonna fall for Rhys right away. I understand that, but there was so many times where he was being kind of like how Nesta treats her like shit, right? You're basically like, okay, that's essentially what she's doing to Rhys in the beginning. Is like she's going out of her way to just be unfriendly, and it's so annoying. What chapter was this? 16 is a very important chapter because she meets all of the inner circle. She meets Cassian and Az, and they also find out that that the king of Hybern wants to resurrect Jurian now that he knows basically it can be done. Isn't this interesting? When she goes to the prison with Rhys, I have in here that she sees a little boy that looks like Rhys with blue eyes, and I wrote, was this Rhys as a kid? Because when you see the bone carver, it shows you it's different for everybody. So yes, if anyone's smiling over there, that was the first thing I thought. The bone carver basically tells them all about the cauldron and its importance, and that they need to find these 2 pieces of the book in order to like basically stop it. Insane chapter where Rhys was like, go into the Weaver's hut and find the object that is pulled to you, and it ends up being the ring from his mom. And she's so pissed at him. She's like, I can't believe you'd let me go in there, and basically almost die. And then we have Rhys showing Feyre the true colors about Ianth, and how she basically is nothing that, she says she is, and she's horrible. So they go and see Nesta and Elaine, and of course it's a terrible, terrible, terrible welcome from Nesta. What else can you expect? Oh, look. This is what happens when I'm filming right now, and it's the sun is setting, and it's 3:14 here in Chicago. All right, there we go. It's a little dark, but I'm gonna have to start speeding through this, but these videos are so long because I have so much to say. Also in 24, I literally wrote, I'm calling it now that Nesta and Cassian end up together. The dinner was so awkward and they spent the night at the mortal home, but I just got this vibe the way that, I think Cassian is like the only person in the universe that can handle Nesta and all of her terrible existence. Also, if you don't know this, I'm sure you guys know if you're watching this video, but book 4 is from Nesta's point of view, and I'm just like, I'm not looking forward to it. I'm really not, because whatever. I'll probably talk about this a little bit more in the Court of Wings in Ruin review, but yeah. Rhys knew that she was about to be attacked by the Adder, and he wanted to see that, like, when she gets pissed, all of her powers show up, and she was able to winnow for the first time, which this is also important because you can see that Rhys is really starting to understand her as like a being, and she obviously just can't get through that anger to like figure it out. She then writes the letter to Tam basically saying like, I'm not coming back, and she finally makes that decision, thank God. And then she opens up to Rhys a little bit and is like, will you show me the town? Chapter 30 is really tender. It's like a really tender moment. So when the whole gang goes to their favorite dinner spot, and she finally feels like she's having a good time. Yes, that's what's frustrating. It took her until chapter 30 to like get out of the dumps. And there's the whole summer court fiasco where she basically is butting up to Tarkian, and she thinks that Rhys is gonna make out with Chrysidia or whatever her name is. And then she basically, isn't super great, and she ends up stealing from him, and then, obviously it causes a huge rift. Chapter 38 is where we start to see a tender moment between Rhys and Feyre. As a reader, I was a little upset that it's taken this long, but basically Rhys was down in the dumps because he knew that stealing from Tarkian was not the best move, and he also was upset when the blood rubies come because he's like, this guy really wanted to be my friend, and I just freaking blew it. And then he has the terrible nightmares, and she kisses him on the cheek. Then we're introduced to the mortal queens, who were just so rude, and then they winnowed into the house, which like threw me for a loop, but they were basically given it as a gift. And yeah, that whole part was just like so weird. So chapter 42 is when they go to the Court of Nightmares, and basically Rhys and Feyre are putting on that very playful and sexy show together for all of the people in the night court, basically just putting on this big act, but you finally get to see that physical attraction with those guys. And I think that was a really needed chapter for this book, because so far it's just been like Feyre fighting with herself and, you know, not being able to come to terms with everything that's going on. And, you know, now she feels like she's helping out a little bit, but also gets to get a little bit more close to Rhys. Finds out that Tamlin was part of the people responsible for killing Rhys's mom and sister, I believe, after Rhys had helped him out in the past. And you just like hate Tamlin even more at this point. We have a bunch of stuff going on. There's that little attic scene with those guys. And then he basically gets taken, Rhys gets taken, and he's like close to death, and she finds out that she can save him, which she does, but then she, you know, she's like super pissed, I think, right? Yes, so she's upset because now she's starting to find out that he is her mate, and she's so pissed. She's so livid that he did not tell her, because he has known since that part at the end of the first book where he like looked at her, like it realized and the mating bond clicked, and then he vanished off the balcony. I think that was the last chapter of A Court of Thorn and Roses. And now she's like, what the heck? Like, you've known this whole time? So I have the chapters 54 and 55 were just simply beautiful. You know, she locked herself in the cottage, again is having a pity party for herself, theme of this freaking book, but she basically accepts him as her mate, and, you know, they share a lot of personal information with each other, and he's basically just telling her, like, listen, I've been waiting forever for you. Our poor Valaris gets attacked, and it's just so terrible, and Feyre's like showing up in the fight for sure, she really is, but it's just such a heartbreaking part of the book. End up finding the cauldron, but obviously we know that some shit's gonna go down, which it obviously does, and it's just basically so messed up from there. They're dragged to the court. The freaking mortal queens come in, waltz in with her sisters who are bound and gagged. And basically Tamlin is like, give me Feyre and you can use my lands for your army when you attack. Her sisters get turned in to Faye, and Lucian is like, what the heck? Elaine is my mate. And it's just basically crazy. She puts on that act and it's like, Tamlin, no, like, I've been under Rhys's spell, take me back. And it's just like the fact that he even believed her. And the kicker was, the king thinks he broke their mating bond, when in reality, all he ended up breaking was the bargain. So basically, here are my thoughts overall with all that stuff. Character development, we were introduced to new characters that are just amazing. Our settings obviously expanded, and we got a little bit more depth there. Obviously, the beautiful relationship and mating bond that formed between Rhys and Feyre. I'm so happy that she ended up being mated with him. However, I couldn't give it a full 5 out of 5 because I felt like the middle dragged a little bit. I felt like for me personally, that had a lot to do with how Feyre was just pity party the entire book. However, I do think that aided to her character development in the sense that, you know, she was very weak in the beginning of the book, got a little stronger towards the middle, but we know that she's going to be a boss in the third book, which is definitely true. She shows up in A Court of Wings and Ruin, and I am really looking forward to reviewing that on here. But yeah, I basically loved the book when it got to like 75% and onwards, but it definitely is not my favorite of the series. I would say my favorite of the series is probably the third book. And yeah, so thanks for listening to all of my thoughts on this second book. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this book, if we agree or disagree on any points. And as always, I will see you in my next video. And thank you so much for watching. You guys are amazing. My next review will obviously be on A Court of Wings and Ruin. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, you guys.